I haven't been given the signal yet. I need the signal to say start, so, 30 seconds and counting. So, good afternoon. Hello and welcome to the WIBU-SYSTEMS Day. My name's Steve Atkins. I'm the CEO of Crown Communications, and I'm very happy to be here today and act as your moderator for this roundtable, which is called Redefining the Future, Software-Driven Business Models Unleashed. We're here today, we're going for the next 2 hours, and we're going to discuss collaborative opportunities among fields of machine vision, IT security, industrial IoT, and software protection. And we're going to do that through looking at such elements as artificial intelligence, cloud, digitization, and cybersecurity. Now, I've said who I am. I'd like to introduce these gentlemen that are on my left here. At the very far chair is Dr. Olaf Munkelt, who's the co-founder, co-owner, and managing director of MVTec Software GmbH. He studied mathematics, electrical engineering, and computer science here in Karlsruhe and Munich. In '94, he graduated with a PhD in computer science from the Technical University of Munich. And in '96, Dr. Munkelt and colleagues founded MVTec Software GmbH, of which he's been managing director and co-owner ever since. Since its founding, MVTec has developed into one of the most technologically leading companies in the field of machine vision. Dr. Munkelt has also been a member of the board of the Machine Vision Group of the German Engineering Federation since 2006. And from 2009 to 2018, he was chairman of the group, and he's been a member of the board of the VDMA Robotics and Automotive Association since 2009. So, welcome. Next to him is Dr. Andreas Schaad, who's been professor of software security and dean of studies for corporate security course at Offenburg University of Applied Science since 2019. He's previously worked as head of corporate technology here at WIBU-SYSTEMS and in various technical and management positions for Ernst & Young, SAP Research Security and Trust, and Huawei Security Research. He's the author of 13 international patents and over 60 international publications in the field of IT security, and he also plays bass. So, welcome. Here, right next to me on my left is Uwe Schnepp, who's been working at Hilsche Gesellschaft für System Automation MBH since March 2023. And as head of product management, industrial IoT is responsible for open ecosystems and industrial edge solutions. Prior to this, he's worked for 4.5 years at Cologne-based Q Beyond AG, a leading German IT service provider, and most recently as head of industrial IoT, industry solutions, and strategic partnerships. He's also previously worked for several German companies as an expert for new media and online platforms. And after founding a startup in the Technopark of the then German National Research Center for Computer Science in the 1990s, he's worked for several years at Deutsche Telekom AG in Bonn, and then managing director of Nakama GmbH? Nakama, a leading German provider of B2B streaming services at the time. So, welcome. And last but by no means least, our host for today, with a degree in electrical engineering from the University of Karlsruhe, Oliver Wittenried began his entrepreneurial career immediately after completing his studies and focused on electronic and ASIC design. hardware, microcontroller, and embedded application development for consumer electronic automotive and industrial engineering. With Marcellus Buchheit at his side, he then founded WIBU-SYSTEMS in 1989 and remains the company's CEO. Oliver is also director of the VDMA Regional Association in the state of Baden-Württemberg and serves on the board of directors of the Medical Technology Working Group of VDMA, the board of directors at Bitkom, and the managing board of the Vorderein of the Research Center and at the Karlsruhe Institute of Technology. Not content with all of that, since 2023, Oliver is also the managing director of the IT Security Club, which is a separate enterprise situated at the House of IT Security on WIBU-SYSTEMS campus. The IT Security Club was funded to grow and shape the local community of IT security specialists through collaboration and support with project management and funding. So thank you and welcome to all four of the panelists. What I would also want to say is this is also being broadcast live over YouTube and on the GoToWebinar platform. If you are watching this online and you wish to ask questions, in YouTube you can type in the comments to ask a question, or on the GoToWebinar platform you can type in your question there, and that will be relayed to me through the magic of technology to here, and we can ask that questions. I'm also going to ask the audience here, we want this to be as interactive as possible. So if you have questions, raise your hand so that we can include you in the talks that are happening here today. Okay, so I think we should begin. But what I will do before we actually start the questions is I'd like to ask each panelist for maybe 30 seconds, 45 seconds, just exactly what they're looking forward to getting out of today's roundtable. So, Olaf, I think I'll start with you.
So thank you very much for the introduction. And before I go to this topic, I'd like to say thank you very much for the invitation, Oliver, and also congratulations for 35 success in this small area, small industry, but so important. So it's reciprocal, so to speak, but super important. Well, if I leave this room, I also would have learned from the panelists how they see what kind of software business model will bring us the future. So if I take home 2 ideas, I'm more than happy, because maybe only 1 idea survives for the next 5 years. But this is enough for me.
Okay, thank you. Andreas?
So I've got the luxury of working in academia for the last couple of years, so back in academia. And I actually quite like this event because yesterday evening we already had a lot of discussions where I sort of see the real world again. I mean, I spent lots of time in industry, but 5 years have already been enough to sort of go to my ivory tower and here face a little bit of reality when I actually hear about the real world problems that some people have with respect to my specialty, software protection, but also the licensing part.
Oliver?
Yeah, for me, it's interesting to see the other opinions and also to see the changes in the market. So software-defined business models are not yet used so much. What we did in the last 35 years is software protection. That's where it started with, copy protection against piracy. And now it changes more and more to flexible licensing. And now it begins not only with the software on the PC, but on other things that really software-defined business models are starting. And I think we can dig into that in the next 2 hours.
Okay. And Uwe?
Yeah, I will be more than happy if I had the chance to get to know to each other, to learn more about your expectations, requirements. We as a specialist in industrial communication, we're using WIBU technologies to encrypt our industrial communication apps, to listen to what's going on at the shop floor level, at field bus level, and aggregate this data and provide it for following processing in IT systems and elsewhere. And it's a small facet for us, but a very important one, because there is also our intellectual property part of that, and of course monetization aspects. But we only are enabler in this world, and we have to see how we can help you and whoever is working in the field of digitization in the industry, can make use of this type of technology and learn what the market is really demanding.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, we all here work in the field of cybersecurity in one level or another, and if there's anything that we've heard time and time again over the last few years, it's this idea of artificial intelligence and exactly how is that going to affect what we do, products, solutions, the industry as a whole. So I think a really good way to start off here is a very top level is to ask the panelists, what impact do they think artificial intelligence is going to have on cybersecurity and business models? And I think I'm going to ask Andreas to kick us off with that.
First of all, it's a good question. I think I will need 1 or 2 minutes to answer that. So some people know me, and for the last 20 years, I actually spend a lot of my time in the domain of secure software development. And in the domain of secure software development, we should follow a paradigm which is called shift-left security. So shift-left basically means before you do anything, before you actually start coding, think. So in other words, what we do in the software security domain, we do threat modeling. Threat modeling is a technique to support the entire secure development lifecycle. Now, what does that have to do with machine learning? When you look at machine learning, a bit of a refresher in machine learning, you have a lot of data. And with that lot of data, you actually start training. What do you use for training? You use certain training algorithms, then you compare the quality of the output, and in the end, you select a model, maybe a classifier for image recognition, or multi-classifier for malware detection, and you deploy that model. And that sounds relatively trivial, at least to some of us. The problem, though, is when you look at the entire chain, then there's a lot of stakeholder involvement. So the person who owns the data may be completely different to the person who later owns the model. May be completely different to maybe the legal entity who's doing the model training. May be completely different to the hyperscaler who is providing all the bare-bone CPU power to do the model training. And with that, we actually come to a relatively complex playground of, well, sort of trust and responsibilities. And my take on this is it took us about 25 years to get software development roughly right. And in comparison to what we face at the moment with respect to machine learning, there's still a lot of work ahead of us. So, and in today's round, in today's talk, we are going to and we're going to speak a lot about hardware-enabled security and also a lot about licensing. You will always hear me going back to this little life cycle I just sketched for you, because we see sort of rejuvenation of hardware-assisted trust in different stages of the machine learning life cycle, and also of certain software protection and licensing techniques. And so that, to me, at the moment is where I invest a lot of my research ideas, powers, and I think it will keep us busy for the next 25 years.
Does anybody else have a point of view? Yeah, Olaf?
Yeah, you already touched, say, points which are important, not only in the ivory tower, also outside the ivory tower. And one really very important topic is if you apply machine learning, deep learning, whatever technology, you have to be clear where comes the data from and who owns that data originally. And we at MVTec, for example, we do image processing, machine vision. That means we take image images, like a 12 megapixel image, and reduce it to 5 byte or 6 byte or 8 byte or so, which means that we condense the information, the image, to pass or fail, or within the boundaries or without the boundaries, to make that very simple. And as we were involved with the deep learning technology, which is state of the art today, we found ourselves in a situation that we have a terabyte of data, but we have to clarify whether we own the data or not. Because the idea was we want to provide pre-trained models, which then can be adopted by our customers to fit their application. So we ran an own process, so to speak, to clarify the IP of this data. And the end was that we still have enough data to train our, say, OCR model, which then is used by our customers and they can retrain that. Since then, we can simply say, if you as a customer use our pre-trained model, you are safe because we own the data and we can prove this if somebody comes. So this is super, super important because our customer, they retrain the models with their data and they have no idea to share this data. So data ownership is super important, and it became known to a large audience, so to speak, to the public just recently with the large language models, where all of a sudden it came out that Facebook and Google and you name it, they have used probably data where the origin is not so super clear. And now Facebook is trying to change the conditions so that even the your usual types, your usual little slogans, what you type in, they can also use this for retraining. So it is a very serious issue, and there's no really good solution to it. And I think you can spend more years on looking into this matter.
Anybody else like to say something?
Yeah, AI is a very challenging topic. We are working on that as well. And we can see 3 different topics. One is protecting the AI itself, protecting from the AI, and using AI to make it easier for our customers to integrate protection in their applications. So protecting the AI, that is something we have solutions already yet today. So we have, for example, AX Protector Python that can very well protect Python code for AI applications on host systems. We can also protect GPU code, at least as long as it's stored on a file system prior to the transfer to the GPU itself. And we can protect AI models against direct theft and against manipulation. So protecting the integrity or freeze the AI model, which is important for applications, for example, in medical devices, where the AI model needs to be frozen at the time of certification of the medical device. So that's where we are working already today. Still, there is room for improvements and for further development. And the other side, which is then even more sophisticated, is that we implement AI mechanisms in our protection suite to make it easier for the developers to integrate the protection in their products. That is not available yet, but that is something very interesting for the near future as well. And if it comes to data protection, for personal data, in theory, there's GDPR or similar rules in other countries. If it comes to machine data, there will be an EU Data Act coming into place also very soon, which will be interesting again because the ownership is the ownership of the machine, which is not always clear. If the machine is not owned by a factory but owned maybe by a bank, then the data also in theory belongs to the bank. Yeah, that's some topics about AI from my side.
In contrast to image processing in the, let's say, classical manufacturing industry, data is not available at this scale. So the first challenge is to make data available, because usually data exists between a PLC and some sensors and actuators, but you not get access to that data. So first thing is, how can we get data, access to the data, and where is it gathered? It's certainly not directly sent to the cloud, because also the cloud has a business model, and sending tons of data to the cloud will make AWS and Microsoft happy, but not the owner. So there is still a long way to go in classical manufacturing to do a lot of retrofitting to attach additional sensors. IO-Link is a very good example of attaching digital sensors to machines and production lines which haven't been monitored this way yet. And then additionally, listen to what's going on between a PLC and the rest of the manufacturing line and take out the relevant information and do some pre-processing with it, and then build up your model. And then the question is, who owns it? The operator, the owner of the machines, or the manufacturer of the machines who provide the interface to access the data. So certainly that has to be discussed and regulated. I think there's coming up something from the EU about this, because Data Act, because we know about our personal data in the cloud, but what about machine data and how this is handled? I think there's still a long way to go to make that available. The algorithms are there, the technology, but the circumstances are still not clear.
Let's move on from this. I mean, you mentioned the new Data Act. What impact do you think the European legislation is going to have on the cybersecurity and on your business models and the business models are out there? Who'd like to?
So I probably want to do one remark. To answer your question straight away, I don't know. Very easy. But I have a wish. My wish would be that within the European Union, we are more supporting innovation rather than regulation. And I really have an issue with this big force towards putting more regulation on the table and even forcing small and medium-sized companies to do tons of paper material to just say this data can be at risk in some situations. In our world, in our machine vision image processing world, we don't know what our customers are processing, what kind of images, what kind of objects they are looking at. This is such a diversity, so I'm really having trouble following all this regulation. Of course, we will follow this because we are a German company and we comply with all the rules. But I'm questioning the effort which is set inside this regulation, and I'm questioning the effort which a small and medium-sized company has to fulfill in order to comply with the regulation.
I shouldn't say it. I actually.
Go on.
But now I do.
Do it.
So yeah, we are among. Hello world. So 3-4 weeks ago, I was invited to an event, also sort of IT security event, and there was also some. I think it was a lawyer. He was speaking about one of these many regulations. Afterwards, he came to me and he was like, "Did you find that interesting? You know, did you ever watch like Homer Simpson when he's got this little bubble which says like, don't say it, don't say it?" And I just said no. So I was just very honest. Yeah. I do very much understand why we need these regulations, but in my very ideal world, security comes from the spirit of the development and the product team. Sort of it's an intrinsic feature. If it is coerced and forced upon a development organization by a legal entity, it's too late, basically. So that's my take. I have got no clue about these regulations. I avoid them as much as possible. But I'm a fierce believer that good products come from a good spirit in the development team.
Uwe.
But also good product needs rules, and to protect the users, I would say. And so many companies, especially small and medium-sized, they are now forced to start to work with these technologies, not really knowing what's going on in the apps or how the data is handled and interfaces and standard passwords, and they have a lack of skilled workers. So I think it's very important to raise the level to which such technologies should be used, especially in the industrial domain, because it's really crucial for these companies. We all know what happens if ransom software comes to a IT system. Close to the area where I live, there have been 80 communities blocked for 6 weeks, I think, because the local IT service provider was hacked and the files were encrypted. And these social communities, they couldn't pay any subsidiary to people living in this area. They paying for the rent and everything. So they couldn't issue any number plates for cars anymore. So it's a real threat. And for companies producing things and now connecting sensors, even if it's IO-Link, and connecting it to a cloud service and not knowing exactly what the threats are, I think we have to make that public and aware what's going on, and we need these standards. And we, as Hilscher, as a main business, is providing chips and components to connect devices, to build PLCs, program those PLCs, etc. And it has to be built in. The industry must be forced, the component industry, including Hilscher, must be forced to reach that level, because the users usually do not have the knowledge about the potential threats. And the manufacturers of such components for digitization, they must be compliant with the necessary standards to protect their customers. And this is why I think the Cyber Resilience Act, for example, is a good thing. And we are really, also our customers, we're extremely working on that, and I think it will help and prevent damages.
Yeah, that's true. I can agree. On the other side, of course, it creates extra effort for us. All these regulations, AI Act, Data Act, Cyber Resilience Act, and so on. But what's important then that gives a positive aspect is that it's maybe not a European thing only. So these standards should be somehow harmonized globally. And that has been some of the topics of the political discussions last week with our Minister Habeck in Korea and China as well, that we have clear rules how machine data, for example, can be transferred cross-border and are allowed to be transferred. And by international standards that are at least similar in the most important points for Cyber Resilience Act regarding the temper protection and security of devices, regarding Data Act about the exchange of machine data, and regarding GDPR maybe as well, regarding the exchange of personal data, then it makes the life easier for operators and for manufacturers of devices that can be sold and used globally, and not being different for each different country in the world, which is would be a nightmare for small and medium-sized enterprises, and we would be not able to fulfill that rules if it's different in each country.
Let's stay with you, Oliver. I mean, you've recently been to South Korea with the German trade delegation, etc. We have opened offices over there. You've got officers for WIBU around the world, in the US, etc. Let's say, where do you think Europe and Germany stand in the areas of AI and cybersecurity compared to, let's say, Asia and America?
I think the content is not so different. So GDPR compared to the Chinese, I don't know the name now, something like data security regulation there is very similar. But the international, but all of them says personal data need to stay inside the EU. Personal data need to stay inside of China, and that might be in other countries the same again. So there need to be clear rules under which conditions this data can be exchanged cross-border. And especially for machine data, predictive maintenance, all these applications, also you are doing this in the industrial automation with Docker containers and the data shared. It's necessary to do that cross-border, and there need to be clear rules that the data is not stopped at the border.
Okay. But where would you say in terms of actual innovation? I mean, one of the things that we got back to here was innovation rather than regulation. So in terms of innovation for cybersecurity and data protection recognition, where do you think Germany and Europe stands in comparison to Asia and America, who appear to sometimes, if you look at the media, have a different approach to people's data out there.
Completely different, yeah. So in Germany and in the EU, we are absolute on top of regulation. So if you look for many rules, then you can find it here. And if you look for many regulations, we have it. And we execute it to a perfection level. And that sometimes also hinders innovation and makes innovation or progress slower. If you're looking in the field of AI and the use of medical data, for example, if you have a lot of medical data from many people and they can be used in the benefit of the people in Germany or in Europe, it's quite difficult. So I think research institutes have an exception. They get all medical records from the hospitals in Germany, but for commercial use and maybe use for training so that AI can support the doctors in detecting anomalies and detecting sicknesses, it's very much limited in Germany and in Europe. That's from the privacy side, that might be an advantage, but on the side to help the people to defend their sickness, it's hindering. Yeah.
But not just regulation. I mean, in terms of actual innovation, do you think we're further? I think.
Maybe one topic. Yesterday or the day before yesterday, there was a news that Volkswagen, the largest car producer here in Germany, is now setting up a joint venture with Rivian. Rivian is a US company based in California, and they do electrical vehicles. But their core IP, I think, is not the hardware of the vehicle itself, it's the software within the vehicle. And lots of the software is AI-driven because it supports autonomous driving very well. So if you just read the news, you say, oh, okay, this is just another joint venture. But you have to know that Volkswagen set up several years ago CarReady, an own large entity which tries to build the software as a unified software platform, as far as I understood, for Volkswagen. Basically, they have not reached their objectives so far. A company with more than 200 billion euro turnover per year is not able to set up an innovation in order to make autonomous driving happen. So I think we are really not at the top notch of innovation here. It's happening somewhere else, in a company which produces $1 billion of losses. Just look it up, Rivian. Yeah? But the cars, by the way, are great. I saw them this year. So, but this is another point. So we are not at this top notch of innovation in here.
Yeah, but innovation doesn't help really, and they're burning money, and this is why they are desperate for the money for Volkswagen to find some common ground. And so both companies have big problems, and innovation from the US might help, but it's not an advantage in itself. So they have to prove that cooperation works and better than on their own. So maybe it works, but Rivian hasn't been very successful in the US either.
Yeah, this is true. They are burning money. And this helps them. But my wish would be that a German car manufacturer is able to develop this by themselves.
If I may, I wanted to make a point on, can't help it, GDPR. Actually, I find it quite common misconception that GDPR inhibits machine learning. I basically think the problem is that maybe we in the sort of European world, we are not that good in understanding data at the moment. Because there are lots of techniques you could use, tokenization techniques, actually encryption techniques, outsourcing personal data into separate lookup tables and so on. You can do a lot of stuff with personal data to make it suitable for machine learning purposes. You just need to invest a bit more time, that's true, and you need to understand your data. But this common, I personally actually think it's a big misconception that GDPR inhibits machine learning. A bit more difficult, but it's not a showstopper in my opinion.
What do you think needs to happen to increase the rate of innovation for Germany and Europe? to be able to move faster than those companies in Asia and America? And it can't just be regulation, surely.
Education.
Education.
That's what I
Well,
teach.
you would say that,
Teaching,
yeah.
for sure. For sure.
What is anybody else?
Yeah, I think that's education is one point, yeah. And education pays for what we see in 10 or 20 years. So, but we have to do this, we must do this. There's no way out. Another point is that financial situation is completely different here. So the startup scene in Germany is not bad, but it's by far not as good as it is in the US. So the willingness to spend capital for small steps and the ability to say, okay, I've lost some money, but in the other round I gained some money. So this fail and learn approach. There's no habit basically here. There's a resistance that people say, if I fail, I'm the bad guy. No, you're not the bad guy. You have done some learning lessons with the other 10 people in the room have not done in their entire life. Mm-hmm. So now you have learned what you have to avoid for the second round. Go ahead. And we don't have this this mood, this mindset. So we need a better ecosystem for supporting also startups and let them fail, let them grow. This is completely different here.
Yeah. Uwe, I know you've started with
Yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of startups.
Yeah.
Interested to hear your point on this.
I think it's about where the money goes, because as you have seen, the interest rates have gone up, and so of course investors go there and get better return on invest than investing in a startup. And another thing is the global reach. I think in the US, and maybe also in China now, where there's a lot of money, they invest in global business models. In Germany, you think about being good in Germany or Europe, but they do not have the vision to be a global market leader and needs global invest. I mean, Elon Musk, he spent a lot of money, but for other people's money, not his own, and and they have global businesses in mind. And here in Germany or Europe, we have a limited approach. And it's about the mindset, right? But it's also about where does the money go? And currently it goes into interest rates rather than in startups, I would say.
Mindset is a very good word for that, what's missing. And that's not only for startups and for the willingness to fail and maybe then start again and having learned something. I think that happens in development departments as well. So having taking the risk, trying something new, doing it in another way, not trying to foresee everything which could be required in the next 5 years and writing hundreds of pages of documentation and requirements, but starting with something with some basic elements only, trying to get customer feedback, seeing if we meet what the customer wants, and then enhance it step by step. Maybe in Asia that is very common to do, and they go to the market with products that are not mature in any aspect. Maybe that's too early. Maybe we would be better to do a good mix between the old, very careful design and development, what has been good in the past for Germany to grow and to have made in Germany quality recognition globally, and this fast things with doing it quick and dirty and going out to the market, maybe something in between, but trying to be flexible, agile, and so on, and being faster. I think that is something that also differentiates Germany and Europe from Asia and US. Asia and US, they are faster. They start with and going earlier to the market. And that is something we should do as well.
The thing is, in the field of cybersecurity, the term quick and dirty doesn't quite work that well.
That's not good. That's right. So you need to have a certain level of security, and you need to have that from the very beginning. So you should not even do a prototype or a proof of concept without taking secure software development cycles into consideration. That is something that needs to come into the blood, and it needs to be basic in every step that is done.
Okay. Well, I partly agree because I think it needs a good mixture. So if you want to be agile and fast, you need an MVP, and you're not covering everything. And maybe it's not the complete solution, but you develop a notion, and in a second or third step, you can start to build a real product out of it, even be compliant with cybersecurity things, etc. So it has to be the use case which is in focus, and the usage for the benefit for users, and then in a second and third step, build in the necessary cybersecurity. I would say being aware of that, but it's not cybersecurity. At least from where I'm working in, is not solving a problem. It's a prerequisite, to actually have it rolled out and deployed in real factories.
Mm-hmm.
If you work in cyber security directly, as WIBU is, of course, it's a different approach. But if I want to make innovation, I do not start with cybersecurity. I'm thinking about what problem I would like to solve.
So I would like to add to Oliver's comment. I personally think, no, I've seen it. It's completely possible to have secure software delivered fast. So that's for sure. If your organization, your development organization really has got a good understanding of what I earlier referred to as shift left, and really think first a little bit. In any case, it's way cheaper to have a proper design than trying to fix a broken design once your code has already been deployed on a productive server. That's for sure. Yeah. What concerns me though, I'm really not a specialist in machine learning, but it seems to me that all the stuff that we learned so painfully over the last 25 years in secure software development, we completely forget now with respect to this machine learning lifecycle. I give you an example. We've got all these wonderful algorithms we use for training purposes. I don't know, random forest, nearest neighbors, whatever they are, naive Bayes. And even the inventors, so if you look to the people from Silicon Valley, even the inventors sort of admit that with respect to these training algorithms, we are sort of where we were with crypto 35 years ago. We have basically no control over what these algorithms are doing. And for that reason, we've got this huge problem of adversarial models. Because the way these models, these algorithms are used to train a model, again, maybe a classifier of image recognition, they're completely not robust against adversarial attacks. And so what are we doing at the moment? We're doing exactly what I don't propagate. We do sort of shift right. We try to use some additional testing library at the very end of the process and try to fix it when it's already broken. And luckily, there seem to be some very clever people, namely the inventors of these algorithms, who understood the problem. But at the moment, we seem to work. It's not broken, but we know something is at the algorithmic level fundamentally flawed in machine learning. And unfortunately, we seem to have to live with it for the next decade until they propose a new set of adversarial robust algorithms.
I mean, when you speak about, that sometimes it feels that there's no control and you've got these adversarial models and stuff. I mean, we've spoken about regulations, but what about the rise of international standards in these areas? How much does international standards really play a part of all of this?
So first of all, I've got no idea about international standards, but I'll give you an example. An example why we will always have security problems. Maybe it's not clear to some of you, but products you deliver to the market, hopefully your products generate money. Why do they generate money? Because they offer functionality to the customer. Up to the point where maybe an adversary uses this functionality, legitimate functionality, in a completely unforeseen way. For that reason, you cannot have perfect security, because very, very often the adversary just uses legitimate functionality. And if you would turn it off, you can't sell your product. That's basically it. Sorry, I have to come back to these adversarial models. Now, what do these models do? So you've got a wonderful algorithm for image classification. And what it is it's basically a multi-dimensional, highly optimized statistical network. And if the adversary is just able to identify the very, very sweet spot at the decision boundary, maybe just one single pixel, then you've got, the usual example is you got a sweet picture of a cat, and because the adversary just changed one pixel, it's identified as 99% guacamole. And that is also, the models that we train, they offer functionality. And in most cases, they do a wonderfully good job. But nothing can stop the attacker to supply you with a model where maybe one pixel or 1 degree of color in the RGB color scheme has been changed. And, for that reason, unfortunately, we have to live with some problems for a long, long time until hopefully clever people find a solution. And they did in crypto, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah, let me come back to the standards question. In the machine vision world, there are many standards, and this is not so much linked to cybersecurity, but I want to highlight a pattern, what we see also through my work at the VDMA. And this pattern is that there's a strong move of China to also set up their own standards, also in our section in the machine vision world. This is mostly a derivative of what has been developed like 10 or 15 years ago in the Western world, if you want to say so. So what we see is that the original, say, really perfect idea to have an international accepted standard throughout a community of countries or of industries, to say it this way, is broken up. So actually what we see is that the standardization efforts in the Western world deviate from the standardization efforts in China. And China is an important player in our market, there's no doubt about it. So we see that there is a shift. Our products, which we supply to the international markets, they have to comply with the standards here, and they also have to comply in the future with the standards inside China. Otherwise, we're going to have a problem inside China. I don't hope that this will happen on the cybersecurity end as well, but I fear it might be.
One of the presentations we had today was from Daimler, and they talked about digitization, which I think is the effects of digitization on, let's say, traditional business models. If we say over there, and especially we've also heard about cloud and the pivotal role that cloud is going to play in these particular areas. Can I throw it out to you gentlemen? How you think digitization in general changes the industry's traditional business model? So how does digitization, if we're told by Carly Fiona that everything that can be digitized will be digitized, is this going to have a huge impact upon the traditional business models, Andreas?
I can just tell you an example from sort of, some of you are my age. Remember the good old day when you sort of had to set up your own Tomcat server on your own machine, and it basically took you 6 to 8 hours to have a web server running? And I don't know if anybody ever, even 5-6 years ago, tried to do the same thing with an Azure Cloud or AWS. It takes you 5 minutes to get a service running. These days, you have got your development environment, your Visual Studio Code, and it's basically serverless functions. You just, if at all, you hit a little button and the thing is running. And so for sure, it's totally clear that from productivity point of view, the cloud model is there to stay. And if anybody hasn't, I totally understand that certain organizations will not adopt it for certain purposes, but the world where I come from, service-oriented world, so sort of where every resource is just accessible via REST call, for example. In that domain, you would be foolish to try and again move back to an on-premise world from a productivity point of view.
Yeah, I think we are still in the beginning of the digitization and the digitization of business models in products. So there are some things already on the market. So software is mainly sold on a subscription base now, or very often sold on a subscription base, and maybe also in the cloud, not on premises anymore. For physical devices, for machines, it's still the exception. So that's slowly coming, that physical devices are also customized or tailored to the customer's demands. So that you have one physical device that can be really with a basic functionality that's always required, that's always in, but then the additional functions are activated when the customer needs it. So the customer gets exactly the product he needs and he pays exactly for what he needs. And this payment for specific functions can be pay-per-use or can be subscription. There are some examples already. If you have a air compressor from Kaeser, you can, instead of buying the device, you can pay according to the generated air. If you have a big machine from Trumpf, you can get a business model like pay per parts, but that is still in the beginning, also in other kind of devices. And here's a big future also for our licensing and protection technologies, because with software licensing and more features in machines, in devices are software realized, much more than in the past. Hardware is more standardized, software is more doing the functions. And here the new business models can really create benefits for all sides. For the vendors that can create recurring revenues, for the users that only need to pay for what they need, and with new business models as well. So I think we will see a lot of changes in the next years.
Well, I would like to separate the topic of digitization and cloud. So why is digitization important for industry? In the past, Germany has been very successful in building and selling machines and selling spare parts, not getting paid for the service. I had customers in the past, they did support free of charge, telephone, 5 support people for 2 years because it's the warranty period. But then the people continued to use the same phone number, and every time they had a problem, they called for up to 10 years. So service was always a cost center, right? Nowadays, there is a lot of competition, right? Especially from Southeast Asia. The largest machine building export nation is China nowadays. So you have to do something, and your classical business model will not work anymore. So you are shifting to service. That's one point. On the other hand, there is a lack of skilled workers, retiring. The boomers are going to retire. So what do you do with all your expert knowledge and improve efficiency and in your production? So you need to have data to learn more about your machines and your production lines, and artificial intelligence might do the job of experts who retire. And so hopefully you have a good model, a trained model to do condition monitoring or predictive maintenance in your production line in the future, not having the experts to do that as in the past. So that's one thing. And this is why digitization is so important. And once you have the data, you can start to think about data-driven business models, turning CapEx in OpEx and so on. It creates many opportunities, definitely, and people will try out what do people accept, right? So, for example, in the application domain, everybody's talking about software as a service, but the machine builders, they don't like to pay a monthly fee for using software. Software usually is free of charge. They used to pay for hardware. So what you do, you sell hardware with software for a one-time fee, and then you charge update and support in the subsequent years. It's not that easy to turn existing models into new business models. So that's one thing why digitization is important and will make its way, definitely. Cloud is a separate issue, and at the moment I do not agree with you, because Volkswagen is very foolish. They say, no way. In my production line, there is no contact to the public cloud, full stop. You're not getting in. So they might be foolish in your point of view, but I think at the moment they're doing well. And so we have to see what benefit brings a secure cloud to users. As I said before, tons of data in the cloud doesn't make sense. So it has to be the right amount of aggregated, interpreted data in the cloud to do some global or centralized analysis of data, but not all data has to be transferred to the cloud.
I might correct what I have been saying. With the exception of some blue chip companies which have got enough money to run their own data centers, you would be foolish not to use the public cloud.
Yeah, one more comment. I like the quote which was shown by the gentleman from Mercedes. As the woman, I think it was a European Union commissioner, I'm not quite sure, she said that everything which can be digitized will be digitized. I wish that the administrations in Germany would follow this approach. So this is one more comment. And another comment is, and this is more practical point, as this was also on the slides of the Mercedes-Benz panel, you mentioned that just now, the shift from CAPEX to OPEX, so capital expenses to operational expenses. This is very easy to say, but the big problem, this is what we learn from our customers, is that the budget processes are simply not designed that way. The budget processes are designed the way you spend money and you own that thing. This is exactly what you said. If you have something where you know this machine will work for at least 5 years, usually for 10 years, you have to bring this into your balance sheet. You have to bring it into your financial reports. So this creates dependencies, which are not as easy to solve or to set up as you would probably think. This is a real hinderer for going forward with subscription-based models on a large scale.
So it does seem as though we're coming back to a lot of companies that say, listen, I want to spend this amount of money, I want this return, or this amount comes back, and I want to own what it is. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, this is exactly. So, and this has not been thought out because there's no process behind it. If you come with the idea to your customer and say, we also have a different model, they go back to the financial accountant and he simply says, oh no, we have never done that. The point is they have done this. Mm-hmm. If they run SAP, they're doing it already. Yeah. So you have to talk to the right people then, because they already have software running which is based on OPEX. But this is a process, and I personally think this will take at least another 5 to 10 years before this becomes more a kind of usual thing. Oh, we add another software under this umbrella of OPEX, and we are fine. We can deal with it.
I mean, let's talk a little bit. I mean, you're talking about the product, but we don't talk enough about what is the price put upon user experience in these areas, especially when it comes to trying to balance innovation with security for a better user experience. So, I mean, let me throw this over to you, Oliver. I mean, how does a company maintain a balance between innovation and cybersecurity, say?
That's different. The cybersecurity tasks you need to do, that is, like Uwe explained before, that doesn't create customer benefit from the functionality. But without having this security integrated in the product vendor, product manufacturer cannot make sure that the product is working as it should be. And it's much, much more expensive in the end, and it's no more compliant than with the new regulations coming. If the product vendor says my product is as it is, and to use it in a secure way, it's the task of the user, of the operator of the machine, of the device. That is no more possible, because in many cases the user or the operator is not possible to make an envelope around the machine or the product to make it secure. The security needs to be integrated from the very beginning.
I think from the user point of view, I would boil it down to risk assessment. So what is the risk if I don't have that? This was clearly visible in the last talk of Tetra, where the risk is you're losing your IP. Okay, this harms you. This is not good. Second risk is you let your customer produce something which he doesn't want to produce. So that means second thing, you lose your customers. And it's like with every risk assessment, what is it? It's like you take, say, the money, the pile of money, which you probably lose or you have to pay, and then you multiply it by the probability of the event. And then you get something which is the basis of what you want to invest for cybersecurity. And I'm saying this because in machine vision it's sometimes a little similar because you inspect something. You can also say, I don't inspect my produced parts, they are all good. We have 6 or 3 microns or whatsoever, and everything is okay. However, if this device goes to, say, a wafer setup, and it scrams a wafer which is worth $100,000, then you have lost $100,000. It's also not so good. So I think we should more look at the side of what is the risk which is involved in here, and the risk can be tremendous. This is, I think, the difference to many other assessments concerning software which enables or where it helps actual machines to produce something.
No?
Maybe.
Okay.
Again, I shouldn't say that as a security expert, but functionality first, always. If you deliver, and again, it's actually very interesting because my perspective. So I've got lots of hardware people here. Again, I'm a complete software person. I've got no idea of hardware basically, but in the software world, if a user cannot integrate an API seamlessly immediately into their product, they will just go somewhere else. Yeah, they call it churn and attrition rate, what the big web companies measure basically. So, but again, shift left. I think you can actually develop a quite secure product which is very, very functional. I think there's no contradiction.
So you think that functionality is the prime raison d'être for the development for the majority?
For the majority of software, yes. But before I stand corrected, of course, medical software and a certain automotive and avionics, it's completely different. I understand, but my perspective is on average consumer software. And their functionality first. Otherwise, you lose money immediately.
And user experience, I think, to make user experience, to make it easy to build good user interfaces, and instead of having too many functions, and therefore software skills and UI skills are extremely important for acceptance and the usage and benefit. Yeah, definitely.
Oliver, did you want to? No?
Yeah, user experience. A few minutes ago, the keyword hardware was said by you, Andreas, and user experience has also something to do with trust. And trust, you can trust something only if you think you understand it. And if it comes to dongles, so everybody of you knows dongles from, I don't know, 1985 with the first PCs. There are dongles, protect the PC software for being pirated. But a dongle today is really a piece of trust anchor. It's a system that is with limited complexity, that can be evaluated, that can be tested, that can be really secure, while complex systems in the cloud, even on a PC or on a server, they are so complex with so many components on the software side that nobody can evaluate really and try and guarantee some kind of security. So a small piece of hardware as a trust anchor is very valuable, even in applications with the cloud, where the edge devices or the endpoint devices have a secure identity and something that is easily put into such a small hardware device. So, and many people thought that dongles will disappear. Of course, the dongle for CAD software on your office PC, that you have a dongle connected to each PC in the office, you will not see that anymore. You have that either on the server or you are using software-based licensing for such applications. But it comes for industry applications, giving a machine a secure identity that is used for for predictive maintenance, for communication of the machine with the backend. That makes a lot of sense to have such a small hardware that is trusted and secure.
I know we were speaking about this last
we
night.
were, and I'm going to capture the
Yeah.
conversation now,
Yeah.
because this is actually, I find it quite fascinating. If you look into this sort of ideal model I sketched with the machine learning lifecycle, and I told you that there are lots of different parties involved, legal entities, physical boundaries, and computational boundaries. If you look at a little bit at the literature over the last 10 years, there's a significant portion of publications which actually show how to use what Oliver just called trust enablers in these distributed settings. Yeah? So there's, maybe I just throw a name, there's a very interesting paper, it's called Perun, P-E-R-U-N, Perun, and they actually show how they use a mixture of, for example, the TPM chip, Intel's SGX enclave technology, and some other things to make sure that the entire machine learning chain is secure. Yeah? So the TPM, but it could be any trust enabler basically, for having some hardware-assisted root of trust for all the cryptographic keys. Because if you got lots of data owners, you need lots of different keys basically, because the data will be encrypted under the different keys. If you want to make sure that maybe certain parts of code run in an environment you can control, you use something what we learned this morning, code shifting. In a cloud setting, maybe people use some enclave technology, and the hyperscalers to provide this. So it's actually very, very fascinating, because lots of distribution, lots of virtualization, lots of making things completely digital, but then people actually really want to have hardware-rooted security back, ranging from small cryptographic or hardware tokens up to huge rack-scale hardware security modules for enterprise-scale cryptographic key management. So it's actually quite an interesting development over the last 10 years. Oh, sorry, yes.
Yeah.
Glad that you mentioned TPM. This little trusted platform module is more or less now mandatory in industrial PC or edge gateways. So we expect, especially for the CIA, that the hardware has to have a TPM on it and serve as a trusted root for applications and the certificates. We're not building, Hilge is not building edge gateways or industrial PCs, but we are getting it from big producers such as Advantech in Taiwan, but we have to make sure that in the factory where we transfer our operating system onto this hardware, we also deploy the certificates and really prove and get a certificate on that it's all compliant with CIA, etc., etc. So I can imagine that a standard TPM will act as a trusted root for different applications on such devices, and so definitely it became more and more important, and we have customers now who ask to provide their own certificates in this hardware. So we have to interface our factory with their environment to get those certificates, because they need it on the device to communicate with their cloud.
Sorry, Oliver, please. No, and what I also observed is, staying with the TPM again, 5 years ago, it was basically rocket science to use a TPM. I don't know if anybody ever tried to program a TPM. The interface was quite nasty. But actually now, these days, they just released high-level interfaces for Python, basically. So making it much easier to use these things. And that's actually one thing I think which is very important also for companies like WIBU, that the technologies become really easily usable, also by maybe not highly proficient developers.
Yeah, and we have seen this morning that the CodeMeter containers, the licenses, so where the software vendors or device manufacturers stores the licenses and conditions, it can be software-based by activation with this encrypted and signed license file, which is bound to a fingerprint of the target system. If the target system has a TPM module, it will be bound to that TPM module as well. So we are using that as a security anchor then for binding the software-based license. Or it's in the dongle with a security controller like in your passport, or it's in the cloud, where of course we need to trust a little bit the cloud operator where the cloud server is hosted. That's one point. Another point I would say in regard to trust, if you make a security solution that seems to be complicated and nobody understands exactly what is done, it's very hard to get the trust. So many years back, we got the German IT Security Award in a research, in a collaboration project together with KIT and FZI here in Karlsruhe with our Prairie Box protection scheme. And we win the first prize in the highest award, the German IT Security Prize. That was 100,000 euro, what we got for that. And what we did is we publish all the mechanisms that we are using for protection. So the customer who is familiar with these technologies can himself understand against which attacks this protection scheme provides security and against which attacks it cannot help. And the basic at the end that the protection is working is that the cryptographic keys are kept and stored in a secure way, that they can be not compromised if it's a private key or if it's a symmetric key, and they cannot be manipulated. That's the basic root of trust and security. And I think security by obscurity will not work. So we need to publish the mechanisms we are using so that people and companies can trust our technology.
It does seem to be that, for the past 5-6 years, all anybody's spoken about when it comes to software, security is software. But it does seem to be that hardware and certainly physical elements such as dongles, etc., seem to be coming back as people really want to, and companies really want to have something physical in terms of hardware security, don't you think? Yeah?
Definitely.
You think?
I mean, if I bet at least some of you got like a YubiKey or something. Sure, that's where we see
Andreas?
it in the sort of that's where we see it in the consumer space, YubiKeys, and definitely all this hardware-assisted trust. At least if you're here, Cupertino manufacturer, then they took a lot of effort to get trust into this hardware, into the entire ecosystem, basically.
Yeah, it's also surprising for me, I have to say, but it's customer-driven. So the customers feel more confident if they have something in their hands, even if it's small. And it's more like I believe more this little device rather than I believe what is in the PC. Industrial PCs are a little bit an exception because you can custom design them, and this is mostly done. And so there is a higher level of security already involved. But the truth is that the dongle is not the dongle is dead. The dongle is alive.
Where do you think we'll be in about 10 years if we continue, this use of hardware?
I think one secret is that there are not so many, say, CPU producers in the world, which are substantial. And there's probably a resistance to believe there's huge manufacturers, but there's more belief in a small piece of hardware which comes from a small company, and you know what they have built in there. Mm-hmm. So I think it's more psychological way, because from the technical side, I think companies like Intel, they can provide other levels if they want to. But if you have something which can be custom made for yourself, and now I'm talking as a customer, so to speak, then I feel better. I feel like this is for my customers, there's my logo on the dongle, and I'm responsible for that towards the customer. And I cannot reroute the responsibility for my product to Intel, which I don't want to do. So this is more like psychological point, apart from all the nice super features you have on the dongle.
Okay.
Well, I think looking 10 years in the future, everything will, at least at the factory level, industrial level, everything will be IP. Because at the moment, there are new innovations happening, also in Europe, in Germany. So industry is looking at new standards of connecting devices and sensors called SPE, single pair Ethernet, which is two-wire technology, or about 1,000 meters possible to connect sensors to a controller or an IP network. And in the process industry, it's called APL, Advanced Physical Layer. So it will change a lot because it's cheap, it's easy, it can be installed almost everywhere, and there is no 5G needed. 5G is dead as far as industry is concerned. Big companies have started to remove their 5G demonstrators, so everything in the factory will be hardwired, will be single pair Ethernet, and the protocols, even things such as IO-Link, will disappear. The concept of having a sensor description in a digital way is great, but everything will happen at the IP level. And then everything can deploy this way to sensors, to actuators, and maybe even combined to the cloud. So it will be a very homogeneous environment where you have those mechanisms. I mean, even containers and deployments and Docker. Where does it come from? It comes from IT and data centers, where you deploy web servers on the press of a button, and talking about virtualization of hardware. And all that will play a major role in the future. And the IT technology, I made a bet with my former boss. I said IT will overtake OT because of the flexibility and everything. And I think many field bus protocols will just disappear and will be replaced by native API and gigabit Ethernet and a very homogeneous environment to deploy apps and software.
We even see that in automotive area, where in Germany we have this many control units in the car, while a Tesla or the Chinese ones, they have one powerful computer in the car and connect devices without intelligence. So two completely different concepts.
Yeah, one more point, and I like that you've mentioned that 5G is dead. I think the idea behind this was that we save all the wiring, but my experience is on the shop floor, there's a big hesitation to really connect to the public internet. Shop is closed, and it will be closed. It will stay closed also in 10 years. Because you cannot afford that, if you have 4 production lines running in parallel, like 50 meters long, that they stop just because of an incident. This is way too much money. So, and with this new technology, which is then old cable technology, so to speak, you have way more flexibility. But still, you need to make sure that the data you send over these wires are complying to what you have specified. So you still need to have mechanisms to ensure the security and integrity of the data.
But at a different transport layer.
On the different transport, yeah,
layer,
exactly. Yeah. So you need to use I think the ISO model still holds on this end, and then you have to, start at level 3 or 4 in order to make 5 on this level to make this sure. Yeah.
I want to move on a little bit from talk about hardware to secure software licensing, which is obviously, quite a huge area to talk about. And especially, I'd like to start with you, Oliver. What opportunities do you think that secure software licensing opens up for instance, through extending target groups, through customizable products, or what have you?
Yeah, when we started in 1989, we did software protection for PC software. Today, we see software everywhere. We have software released features and functionality in all kinds of devices, and that opens, of course, markets to new areas. And areas where you didn't think of software licensing, have we seen 3 samples today. 3D printing data, okay, you are licensing not the software, you are licensing the IP of the product that can be produced. That is something new. Protecting AI models might be another one. Protecting the digital twin and the information in this AAS, in this asset application shell, is something in the future that will happen. But if we go not so far, if we go to samples that are already in place today, you can go to sensors. In the past, one of our customers, they produced a huge variety of different sensors. And of course, the customer orders the sensor that is currently not on stock, but other sensors the customer are not ordering is on stock. So that's a bad situation. And they have to produce many, many different parts. Today, this company is reducing the hardware variants very much. And they configure the functions of the sensor using software licensing at a later time. Sometimes even at only at the customer side, when the customer installs the sensor and switch it on the first time or operates it the first time, then the sensor really gets the configuration, what type of sensor it is. Of course, that it's only possible within a certain limits of the feasibility of the hardware, what the hardware can do. But that is new business models and new applications that will extend our business a lot.
So I would actually support Oliver here. So specifically with respect to AI models. So again, doesn't really matter whether it's an image classifier or some generative AI. License-based or cryptographically enforced access control is one of the most important features. Because as I tried to explain to you earlier, sorry for being so patronizing, the way we build these models at the moment, there's a very interesting paper which is called Black Box Attacks Are Always Practical, which basically means you cannot at the very moment, from a theoretic perspective, protect your models against an adversary. Because the adversary can always ask questions. Your customer can always ask questions. Yeah. In the worst case, I give you some examples what could happen. In the best case, you just lose money because you built a product and you have no control how people access it. In the worst case, as it has just been documented a couple of months ago, the adversary only needs to ask 3-4 questions to extract a terabyte of training data. Get that, yeah? So that you ask questions and it spits out not the exact training data, but 99.999% data, which is very similar to what was used for training purposes. Remember, it's a statistical model, so it answers with a very high degree of statistical precision. Yeah? So and people have shown that it's possible. And as I tried to explain, at the moment, we have got no idea how to, there are no algorithms at the moment which are robust against adversarial attacks. Yeah? And coupled with that, you want to make your models accessible to your customers. So you need to start thinking about how you enforce API access control over them. And then couple that with some license-based model because you want to generate money. Yeah? And maybe also you want to have a license model which allows you to ask more fine granular questions to your model. So your bronze user, he can ask some questions, but he only gets an answer with a limited degree of precision, which is good enough for him. Yeah? And maybe your silver star customer gets an answer with 95% precision, and gold star gets 99% precision. And at the moment, there are not many solutions who can actually deliver this fine-grained access control coupled with licensing conditions.
Yeah, you are right. And so extracting the AI model with clever questions is possible. One of our blurry box protection mechanisms is something like a speed limit. So against brute force, to limit the number of encryptions per time interval that are allowed, and then there is a delay. So something like that could also help to protect AI models, that inquiries from one source are limited to a number of inquiries that are useful and that make sense in normal usage, but avoid that somebody is trying to make many inquiries in a short period of time just for the purpose of getting IP.
Let me ask, I mean, what kind of licensing models do you think will dominate in the future?
So as we started our subscription model for special form of development license, which we have in our product line, like six years back or so, 6 years, 7 years back, we thought that, oh, this will be, appreciated. It was appreciated, but only by a few people. So it was appreciated by the people who develop in the cloud, who use Dockers, who are at the front edge, so to speak, and where the companies actually allow that. This is also something which we have to keep in mind. And they are still then happy users, but it wasn't appreciated by a super broad audience here this way. Because there's so much, I would say, well, I love what I've doing the past 10 years or the past 20 years, and my company has not changed the way I should develop, so I'm happy with that. What I see in the future is that we have to provide more options, so we have to provide more possibilities for our customers and to provide them the way of licensing they are needed. But the traditional way of licensing, like per machine or per seat or per instance, will not go away. This will stay the next 10 years for sure. If you ask me what is the level, on which level it will stay, I would probably say it will gradually go down, but for sure it will be still more than 50%.
Together with WIBU, we developed a dongle-free licensing model suitable for edge devices. And so this gives us the freedom, to deploy almost any licensing model or subscription model customers like. So why not giving them the choice, either you pay a perpetual license, a one-time fee. So we sell our Profinet tab app for, say, 365 euros, one-time fee and 1 year support. Why not offering, let's say, for 10 or 15 euros on a monthly fee, annual subscription, and then just continue if we have the mechanisms? Why not? It's something I think the market has to decide, and it makes a difference if you start to play around with this software, spend 10 or 15 euros a month, and maybe if you even can cancel it on a monthly basis, which reduces the risk and the invest. So I think we will play around and see what fits, and even feature-based licensing. If you have a basic subscription, why not offering additional features with a little extra money, per month or a year for an interesting feature? I think that's we have to find out, and we don't know yet.
No additions from my side. So I think it depends on the market, it depends on the application. And technically, we have the solution to implement more or less every license model you can think of. And so each software vendor, device manufacturer need to decide and maybe to try for his business model, for his market, which licensing is the best. But the advantage is that with the licensing system, he can do whatever he likes.
But it certainly feels that for a very, very long time, when we talked software licensing, it was very much industrial B2B as opposed to B2C. And it does seem as though those models are starting to intertwine. Would you agree with that? Especially when I hear things like weekly, monthly license fees. I mean, that's not something you would typically hear on a B2B scenario.
Yeah, that's coming in B2B scenarios as well, but it's existing, this and pay-per-use schemes as well. But you see the opposite way as well. If you look to your mobile phone bill, in the past you get charged for each call you do. Now you get a flat rate for a monthly fee, and you can have unlimited calls. So it's not, you cannot say that one business model is the one that will come into the future and another one not. So it will be probably case by case, and in different industries for different applications it will be different.
But let's, I mean, if we are starting to see this fusion of license models, how does that rack up against data protection? I mean, what is there? Usage-based license models and data protection. I mean, how would they fit together?
Good question. If you make a pay-per-use scheme and you really charge the customer for the usage, then it's of course the question if you get information about the individual who is using a product and the software and the functionality and how much. So that might involve data protection issues as well if you are doing pay-per-use models with the users, because you know then how intensive they are using an application. If you do a subscription model, I think it's no more a problem than you only know who has a subscription. But for all the consumption-based license models, data protection might be an issue and needs the acceptance of the user.
Yeah, exactly. So that was the point, acceptance of the user. I see no contradiction. If it's clearly stated in the agreements you have, or if it's, I mean, what does the GDPR say? It must be clearly visible to the user that his data is used in accordance with the offered services, with the purpose. So there's no contradiction here. And even if there are lots of there are lots of possibilities to even have analytical evaluation of user behavior without revealing personal data. So there's lots of things.
So again, we come back to this whole regulation and GDPR and putting stuff in terms and conditions that nobody reads, but at least it's actually down there, right? Pages and pages of it. Would you say that software-driven license models have already fully arrived in the industry?
I don't think so. So it has arrived, but the customer makes the choice. The customer has to see an added value, and it has to see an advantage in it. And if he sees that, then he's open, and then he's asking. Of course, we offer that. But the acceptance is something which we cannot simply expect. We have to really look at the requirements of the customer, and then it goes step by step. And you raised that point, and I really like that. Where are we? Are we moving from the B2B models to the B2C models? I think yes, we are. We are learning from the B2C world, but we don't know where the journey it will take us actually. So there are too many open parameters. There are too many restrictions which you don't have in the B2C world. In the B2C world, if the app on the iPhone crashes, okay, delete it and load a new one. But if we deliver software to our customers that runs 24/7, so there's no way out. That has to comply with many regulations depending on which industry you are. So this is a little different. I'm really having a hard time estimating what will be ahead of us. And there's one more point. I think there's a mixed feelings regarding subscription models. We are used to it in terms of enterprise software like SAP, but also we have office software like Adobe tools, which moved many years back from perpetual model one-time payment to only subscription models. And once they've done that and everybody was happy, they raised the prices to a level which for private people is more or less out of scope. So this creates also, well, in open words, a bad image So say not so good feelings. On the opposite side, you have companies like Microsoft, which offer good deals for families. So up to 5 members, Microsoft 365, you get for, say, fair price. So less of an insurance for whatever life per year. So what I'm saying is that it's not really black or white. It's actually a little gray. And it's not thought out. And I think we will live, and we have to live with this diversity. And as a company who offers services and who offers standard products to our customers, we have to simply keep track with what is technically possible. And WIBU obviously offers these technical possibilities, yeah, including encrypting AI models.
Uwe.
We're already using, apart from SAP, we're using subscription models, for example, Teams. You know, and we all know what it means if Teams had an update. And,
Where's the button?
So, however, it's comfortable and obviously maybe a little bit cheaper than buying the software, installing it. We used it from the cloud. So there are advantages, definitely, but in the factory, there's a different setting and different priorities, I agree. So, yeah, it's still open.
If you look in a factory, if you look on a machine maker, for example, in a machine there are many software components. There are optical, there are cameras, there are sensors, there are many things. So the machine maker maybe sells his machine to a VW on a paper part business model or something like that. But how to afford that each of the different components and sensors in this machine is also licensed with a pay-per-use or subscription-based model. I think that is difficult to handle, at least in my understanding of today. That might change in the future, but I think it doesn't make sense for all applications to have subscription models.
It does sometimes feel that you see subscription-based license models that were originally intended to give certain companies data protection, but now these models are being used in terms of marketing to actually drive revenue. Would you guys agree with that? I mean, you've seen that. You mentioned Adobe. You've seen Microsoft do it. I mean, a lot of people now, or a lot of companies do, you could buy the software originally. Now it's all subscription-based license model, and then suddenly the price goes up, and it's become more than data protection.
Yeah. So this is what financial investors would like to see.
And this is what gets us right back to the very beginning, where everybody in Europe and Germany wants to see an immediate return.
But the truth is, we live in this industrial world. We live in a very competitive environment. Usually we are small and medium-sized companies. Although we have a global reach as a small company, in each of the countries where we do business, we have local competitors. So we have to stay ahead of the competition. That means we have to be better in terms of what we provide as benefit to our customers, but we have also to be price competitive. We cannot simply switch to subscription model and then raise the prices. Then everybody will say, goodbye, goodbye, Johnny, goodbye. This will not work. We have to keep up and run. Subscription is an option in our view, and it needs acceptance by the customer.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Oliver, you are very, deep into this area. Can you foresee a point when these licensing models simply become a way to be able to manipulate the customer, so it becomes more than what it originally was intended for?
I don't know. So subscription will come for sure,
yeah.
But it depends very much on the application. But what I am sure is that for all kind of devices, for all kind of products, even software itself, the product will be more defined by the software, the functionality will be defined by the software, and it will be tailored to the customer. So not the customer needs to buy a huge product and he's using maybe 5% of the functions in the product, but he needs to pay for 100%. That might not work. I think the products will be more tailored, and that's much easier with software-defined functionality together with licensing. The vendors have the chance to tailor the product to the customer very easily. And of course, they can make packages, and they can add maybe some data analytics as well, so that the software vendor, the device manufacturer, can understand which features, which functions are used more in the product, and then spend more effort to make this, improve these functions more, because many people are using that, and other features that are only used seldom times and only in small quantity, maybe that's good enough, don't need to improve on that, so that can influence product development as well and improve the quality.
Andreas?
Maybe I'm a bit more cynical than Oliver. So I actually think from an investor's point of view, maybe a flat fee model is good, which it gives the customer a very comfy feeling that he gets everything. But then, because of very good analytics running in the background, he's pointed towards what he or she really thinks he needs and will pay extra on that. At least that's what you see in the consumer world. That's what's happening. I think what is the key to that is that whoever wants to implement these things has got technology which is more or less automatic. I'm really not an expert in licensing, but I don't think you can have very fine granular, highly flexible licensing if there's lots of manual effort involved. So you need very high degree of automation. Ideally, your analytics software immediately triggers the configuration of your license server, so that even a human is not involved anymore, or only for checking afterwards. But any step where a human would still be involved, that will be too costly to have fine granular licensing.
I completely agree. Yeah, that needs to be integrated very well and seamlessly in the whole business process, so everything is done automatically. Also, extension of subscriptions and so on needs to be done. Maybe if you have pay-per-use schemes, that they are automatically increased and are uploaded again in advance, so that the user never runs into a situation where he can't use the product.
And there's one more point. On the technology side, you can do whatever you want, so to speak. But at the end of the day, there's some salesperson going to the customer and explaining this licensing model. But if this person is not able to use 3 sentences to explain it, then game is over. So simplicity, I think, is really key. It can be complicated in terms of the technical implementation, the background. It can be complicated in terms of the technology you use to do, some AI pricing and all that stuff. But the basic model has to be easy to understand. Otherwise, you won't sell it.
So it's really interesting for me because, again, I'm from a completely different world. In my world, there's no more salesperson because your API, your service is so good that the customer is immediately sucked into using it. And again, everything is happening automatically. Yeah, so no more sales. Customer just implements it. It works, and somebody makes money with the licensing scheme.
What's the time frame for that?
Maybe in some industries, the gaming industry, this is already happening.
Yeah, and look at Tesla. You won't find a shop you buy online. So leave out the trader in between completely.
All fair. I will talk with my sales personnel and let them. Okay.
Well, actually, let's bring in. I mean, we speak about sales. Let's kind of round this whole thing up. What role does your aftermarket business play for companies? I mean, Uwe, you said very, very early on that service started off as being just given free. You would sell the product, and you would throw in some kind of service support in order to differentiate, etc. But what we've basically said is people these days would like to go back to having some kind of physical, even if it's a phone, but they want the software and they want everything else to run in the background, and they don't even want to know about it, and it just has to work, and that's it. But then there's this after-service, after-market business for companies. How does that all bind together?
I think it's an important part of it. Of course, you have to provide self-service portals where people first can find solutions to their problems, but also need some reactive response, to see how they can handle a situation. And I think it's very important. And service is, I would say, half the product, maybe even more.
Yeah, and service will be paid. Even in the consumer area, looking on your mobile phone, you can have a care contract that gives you telephone support for limited time, and then you can extend that to pay for that. And for some customers, they don't need it; they throw it away, they buy a new one. Other customers want to keep it longer, and they are happy if they can get support in case of any question or issue, and get a good answer in a fast and easy way. And many of our customers have applications for the aftermarket, like diagnostic software for cars, for airplanes, and so on. That's a huge market.
So again, I'm not really an expert, but let me share an observation. So as some people gathered yesterday evening, I'm heavily into music. And there's actually a product, a company, it's called Line 6, and they offer a product, it's called the Stomp. It's a little box, and it basically provides effects to your music. It's digital effects. And this product is a hardware piece of product. There's a DSP on it, a little processor. I think it has been on the market for 7-8 years maybe, but this company, they're really good in providing updates every year. So even if you buy this device now, and it's old, for a piece of hardware, it's really old, at least musicians have got a very high degree of trust that the company will continue to provide highly valuable updates to this product. And in the sort of consumer music space, there are countless products like this, examples where companies failed. They sold something, after 2 years, any support was gone, and you lived with an outdated piece of hardware. And some companies really succeeded, and I wonder actually how they do their calculations, because it's actually quite costly to do that.
Yeah, probably one more comment. If you look at your phone and look at the apps you have installed, just try to remember yourself when you have downloaded these apps and for how many years you have these apps on the phone. So I think this set the expectations also on the industrial side. Customers simply expect that support one way or the other on the software side. And especially the example you mentioned, like companies build mostly standardized hardware, and the software differentiates the functionality. Then the software is the key, which you have to maintain for at least 5 or 10 years. So software development as such has also be a little different and has to take into account what kind of developments will we foresee, so to speak, what kind of compatibility efforts we have to implement in there, and how much risk as a producer we can take in order to ensure this compatibility, and at what level we have to say, okay, after 5 years we're going to charge another 10% or so. Yeah, and I think this has not been sorted out. I'm not saying this is all clear now. I think this becomes more important in the future. This is the point.
And in case of vulnerabilities or security issues, you are even legally forced to provide updates and patches for your customers, for your products.
I would even point that further. I've heard, I didn't really attend a training on CRA, but customers are forced to prove that they have also registered for updates for the product they have purchased. So it's not only the vendor,
producer,
it's also the user who has to make sure that they get updates, software security patches for these components they have purchased for, let's say, at least 5 years.
It is one thing that you see where some companies now start to see legacy software support is now also a revenue generation, because not everybody can update, not every company can update within a 5 to 10 year cycle. How long would you say, I mean, you said 5 to 10 years support. just generally, I mean, so Oliver, what would you say for your products? I mean, you have products in the market. How long do you think it's viable to keep support for them for aftermarket business?
We do that very, very long. So, and long-time availability, long-time support is very important for our customers, because we don't sell the end user product. We sell something that our customer is integrating in his product, where long-term availability and support is very important. So looking back, we introduced WIBU-Key in 1989 when we started the company. Yeah. Even today, we provide updates, driver updates for WIBU-Key. Even we don't sell WIBU-Key to new customers, but we still have a large installed base, and some vendors that have implemented WIBU-Key in their product are still purchasing WIBU boxes, so the dongles, the old type of dongles. So it's still about maybe 100,000 pieces a year that we are selling from this old product that is only for existing products for existing customers. But of course, we do that for CodeMeter itself, and it's not only updates of drivers and maintenance for the drivers. We also, with CodeMeter, we have updatable firmware in this security devices, in this CodeMeter dongles, that is also updated from time to time to give additional functionality, and of course, if there are any security issues, to fix them.
That means in your company there's a room which is called a museum, and there you have 10 DOS computers.
Yeah. We have some old computers for testing, but updating very old versions of drivers, that is very tricky, and it's not possible. So normally we do that support. We support the old hardware, but we do the support also on vulnerabilities and security issues for the up-to-date driver version. And we support some versions back, and for example, for older operating systems that are no more supported from Microsoft, for example, if you're looking back to Windows 7 or even older ones, in some cases we are offering a long-term support for our customers. They need to pay a fee for that, but at the end we are not making profit with that, because it's a huge effort to keep the build systems up and running for these old operating systems, and to be able really to compile and to fix something in an old version. So what's I think everybody understands that he must do is, of course, fixing issues in current versions, but fixing issues in old versions, that's a tremendous effort. And we do that in some cases for extra fee of the customers. Yeah.
And I think this is really a trade-off a vendor has to make. Huh? But it says something about the quality of your hardware if it's still running after 25 years. So,
congratulations.
35. Yeah.
Okay, what I'd like to do now is see if there's any questions from the room, just for us to finish off. Does anybody like to say something? Please. Questions? No? Do we have any from online? No? Is there anything further, just to finish? Can I ask each of the gentlemen up here to give a closing statement then of what we've heard, and how you individually would sum up the last 120 minutes. So
at the beginning, you asked, what is my take-home value? I said, well, 1, 2 ideas from also the discussion here. I took these ideas, and one point I learned is that there's a danger not only with the program code, but also with the data, to make this in a very plain statement. This is actually true, and this reminds me on, say, paperwork, which we see from our customers more recently, where there are security vulnerabilities which has to be addressed and all that stuff, which for a maker of standard software is kind of unusual, because the standard software works a way that the real application is done at the end customer. And the responsibility usually is at the end customer side. But for our pre-trained models, the responsibility is on our side. This is one point. One other point is that the flexibility on the technical side, which we have now, to cope with the cybersecurity issues. And I'm a firm believer that this will be more an issue in the future than today. The risk level is high, but it will be higher in the future, so it needs to be addressed. And this is what I will take home when I have to talk to my engineers.
So I would like to finish this discussion with, after these roundtables, after the talks you had, after all the stuff you heard about malware, and so we always tend to go home and think what a bad world we are living in. But to be honest, I personally think our systems have never been more secure than today. We just have more of them, but the technology and the achievements we made as secure, at least from the security domain, and also companies like WIBU over the last 20 years, is tremendous. So we have never been more secure than now. It's just more complex.
Now, our goal is in the next 5 to 10 years or in the future, really to be the standard of software protection, licensing, and security. So if you say tempo, if you want to get a handkerchief, and if you think about software licensing, software protection, you should immediately say CodeMatter. And of course, we want to create really not only nice gadgets, but with our solution, we really want to create a business value for our customers and applications that make sense for everybody. So the use case we have seen this morning with Daimler Trucks and with the spare part production, I think is an excellent use case where you can see that it's not only a business value, but it's also a value for the society or for the environment, not to keep 10,000 pieces on stock for 20, 25 years, then to waste it, and if they are needed to send them by air freight around the world. So this new business model really creates benefits to everything, to the whole society.
Yeah, as I said initially, WIBU is only a small part of our activities, because we're talking, especially in the industrial IoT domain, we're talking about open ecosystems dealing with edge gateways, device and application management, apps, app stores, and of course far more shop floor components which also have to be managed somehow beyond the edge. So, but I've learned a lot during this event here. It was great being part of it, and I've seen how flexible the whole protection, licensing, software protection world is, and that we might have the chance to bring some of the flexibility in our business models and see how the market react. In principle, also accepting the approach in general, that there exists an app store where you can buy an industrial app and then deploy it to the edge and see what's going on. That's a fairly new concept. We are not the only company. Siemens is working in that. We are part of different associations, Open Industry 4.0. There is a new one, Margo, dealing with interoperability between app stores and deployment platforms, creating standards to define the interfaces between those worlds. And software protection is an important part of that. And I'm really curious, maybe in 1 year's time, to come back and see you again and see what has happened since then. Thank you very much.
Okay. All that is left for me to do is to thank the panelists, Dr. Olaf Munkelt, Dr. Andreas Schaad, Oliver Witzenried, and Uwe Schnepp. I thank you very much for your time, your insights, your patience. It's quite hot in here, isn't it? So staying cool.
It is.
I also want to thank Oliver on behalf of all of us for the Inno days that we have, and also your team as well. So thank you to your team, and just finally to say congratulations on 35 years of WIBU-SYSTEMS. You must be very proud, and we can see what you've done, and it's amazing.
Thank you very much, Steve. Thank you very much to all of you for joining our event, and hopefully everybody has got some ideas and what he can do in the future and where he can get benefits for his work, for his products, and for his tasks. So thank you very much, all of you. Thank you very much, Olaf, Andreas, Uwe, for joining on this roundtable. Thank you, Steve, for moderating.
You're welcome. Thank you.